Hello again, friends of friends. I'm sure I knew you well. Alright, so you clicked on this video. You're probably asking yourself the big questions in life already. What is Westworld? Why should I give a shit? Well, let me try to explain. Westworld is an upcoming set of graphic novels, set to be released by the author behind the illustrious Scott Pilgrim series. It was announced back in 2016, and I have spent every waking moment since then trying not to think about it, because we have no real new news on it. However, in a 2018 interview, O'Malley did have this to say about the series. And I quote, "With Westworld, I feel more responsible towards the existing fanbase to make something that can appeal to them and speak to them as they get older. Because it's been a long time. Some of my fans were teenagers when they started reading Scott Pilgrim, and they still need someone to speak for them.
What did you say, nigga?
These words have haunted me since I first heard them. Are you telling me you're making this new series essentially for me and all my friends who read Scott Pilgrim? And we just gotta wait for it to come out? With no release date? Well shit, let's talk about some Scott Pilgrim in the meantime. Before I can speak about Scott Pilgrim, I gotta take you all the way back to the wild year of 2010. I can't believe it's been a decade already, but after that movie released, I was instantly interested in the comic books. So, like any other kid, at age 13 I skipped class and rode my bike to the local library to rent out those books. No joke, really did that. By golly, did that series have me hooked. You gotta understand, guys. For a 13-year-old loser boy who grew up in Toronto on video games and anime, this series in its movie and comic book forms were the greatest thing I had ever borne witness to at the time. So you're telling me that all these cool places in the book are real places that are near where I live? Castle Loma. Hey, wait a minute, I've been to that castle before. Lee's Palace. It was crazy seeing my favorite band play there when I turned 19. Sneaky D's? Where else am I gonna get an obnoxiously large plate of nachos when I'm drunk downtown at 11:48 p.m? They even got Honest Ed's. Shame they closed down, but I mean still. The Rocket. Oh, closed down too. Okay. Lick's Burger. Oh. Okay, maybe the series has aged a little bit. They do have the most Toronto place I can think of. Pizza. And they bring up the dipping sauce. Now that's attention to detail. I've been to culinary school. I know what the secret ingredient in that sauce is. It's the love of the brown dude behind the counter. Makes every bite special. What else? I went to Catholic school with the uniform and everything. Yeah, the whole deal. And the list goes on, but it was all really relatable for me. Listen, I love Scott Pilgrim so much that I dated an American girl that dyed her hair every 3 weeks for several years of my life.
Kill me, please.
I must have read all 6 volumes, front to back, at least a dozen times over the years, but I never really understood them until somewhat recently. And I figured that the 10-year anniversary of the book's ending and the movie coming out would be a pretty good excuse to talk about it. So, here we go. As a teenager, I instantly fell in love with the action, the art, the romance, the video game and anime references, the dumbass protagonist that still gets the girl in the end, and who could forget about the 100 lovable side characters. All of this was very appealing to young me, and if you clicked on this video, it's probably appealing to you too. Oh, and Knives and Kim make out. A lot of stuff in the books, however, went straight over my head as a youth. Things like how intentionally annoying and pointless some of the characters' dialogue is, which perfectly encapsulates how people talk in real life sometimes. The many cool details, like how Scott's "I'm so alone" dream is based on when Envy broke up with him. And like all of book 5, I just could not wrap my head around as a kid. I still loved it for the cool parts, don't get me wrong, but I didn't understand why Ramona was acting how she was, and the impact of what the twins were saying throughout the entire book. It isn't until now that I'm older that I can really appreciate those parts. Now, if you only watched the movie, and I asked you to summarize the plot, you'd probably tell me that it's about a guy who has to beat a girl's 7 evil exes to date her. Says it on the Wikipedia page, I can't argue. But what if I told you that the graphic novels actually flesh out the characters and make them do things for actual reasons, like real people? What if I told you that Scott Pilgrim was an entire character with a serious character arc, and not just Michael Cera being Michael Cera, and that Ramona Flowers was capable of smiling and having fun, instead of just brooding like an emo kid at a party? I know, this is some real advanced stuff here, but bear with me. I think at its core, Scott Pilgrim isn't about fighting evil exes. It's not even about relationships. It's about learning to deal with your past and moving forwards in life. You see, Scott and Ramona have the same issue. They're both god-awful at dealing with their problems in life. When it comes to anything other than fighting, Scott will physically run away from most of his problems. In addition to this, he tries to repress his memories and negative emotions to the point that they create an alter ego of himself, Nega Scott. At the beginning of the story, Scott chases after Ramona because she's literally his dream girl, what with her roller skating through his dreams all the time. But he doesn't bother trying to figure out why his past relationships that caused him so much pain failed in the first place, dooming him to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. It's not until Scott decides to stop being a pussy and get his life together, and eventually confront Nega Scott and his past, that he can finally move forwards in life and hope to have a positive relationship with Ramona. Ramona, on the other hand, is described in the book as a runner. She's got some pretty serious commitment issues if her having 11 evil exes wasn't a big enough clue for you. She generally either cheats on her partner or just outright leaves if she feels like she might potentially be vulnerable, or stuck, as she calls it. When she first meets Scott, she's vague and mysterious about everything, but over time she learns to open up. It's not until she learns to accept the volatile and changing nature of life and make the decision to stop running that her and Scott can finally have a real shot at making it work. Growing up, this was a really important lesson for me to learn. It's called the past because you need to move past it. Oh shit, mind blown, bro. Now that I'm 23, the age Scott is at the start of the story, I'm very happy looking back at the time I've spent with this series over the years. And I can't wait to see what Brian Lee O'Malley graces us with next. I can hear all two of you already asking, well, what about seconds, Danaram? Like and subscribe, and maybe I'll make a video about it later. In the meantime, I hope you all join me in the Wait for Worse world. I'll make a video about it in 2030 when it finally comes out.
Tell side of how many